And hello, YouTube and the rest of the world. Welcome to the Pop Song Professor podcast. And actually, I should be very careful how I intro this because this is a simulcast, I think that's the correct word, version of the Pop Song Professor podcast because today we are recording not only to YouTube, but also to the Pop Song Professor podcast. We haven't started recording that yet, but we will soon. And today we have a very interesting and very important topic. We are talking about Paramore's new album, After Laughter. And I've got some good things to say about it, very few bad things to say about it, but I am also curious to hear what you guys have to say about it. So we're going to go ahead and start recording the actual podcast in just a second. So thank you guys for being a part of this. Answers will be given to questions at some point. I think this is going to be an excellent episode. Thank you for being here already. Those of you who are here, we got already 6 people commenting, 7. You guys are awesome. Glad that you are here. We might get to some of these questions as long as they're on topic, and we'll help you to be a part of this podcast. And so the meaning that you guys are creating will be shared with people in the recording of this podcast and in the live stream. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to press record on the podcast, and let's do this. Hi everybody, my name is Clifford Stummy. I'm the Pop Song Professor. Welcome to the simulcast Pop Song Professor podcast and YouTube live stream. Today we're doing something very special. Podcast audience, say hello to the YouTube audience. YouTube audience, say hello to the podcast audience. Today we are going to be reviewing Paramore's new album, After Laughter, and we're going to be talking about the meaning of each and every single song on this album. I think it's going to be really interesting and really deep. Just as a quick reminder to everybody, if you want to review this podcast, iTunes is a wonderful place to do that. If you go to iTunes and you search Pop Song Professor, you can find it pretty easily. Otherwise, I will be putting links in descriptions and other places. Thanks so much for being a part of this. And let's go ahead and talk about Paramore. Now, my particular experience with Paramore, and I should tell our podcast audience that the YouTube audience is able to live stream chat during this. And so I might be answering comments or questions from you guys. YouTube audience, I would be really curious to hear what you guys have to say about this album so far. And we might read some of those before we jump in to actually breaking it down together. But I want to talk about my experience with Paramore just a little bit. Ain't It Fun has been a really fun Paramore song that I've been interested in. There's another Paramore song that I really like, and you have to forgive me because I am definitely a mainstream Paramore fan. I'm not a big fan of hard grunge rock or very heavy rock in any way whatsoever. I am definitely much more into the light bubblegum pop rock that I think are seeing from After Laughter. We didn't really see it so much from their recent music, but Ain't It Fun and Still Into You were by far my favorite songs from them, partially because they're so unique. And I feel like as a person who considers himself sort of a music critic, one of my favorite things to do is to listen to artists and songs and albums and to try to figure out what they mean, but I also really like to find unique sounds. That's why I love 21 Pilots, because it feels like every song on their album or on any album is unique and slightly different from every other song there. Paramore has a couple of those songs, and I kind of latched on to Ain't It Fun and Still Into You. And so that's kind of the depth of my experience with them. I think there were a couple of their other hits that I got into. Maybe Brick by Boring Brick, or That's What You Get, perhaps. But really haven't been much in depth into them. But of course, Paramore is still a really good band, and I am very much enjoying this new album. And so as I started hearing these singles, I was like, I've got to review this. I've got to get on this, particularly because my 21 Pilots fans also appear to be heavy and huge Paramore fans. And so, I love you guys, and so I wanted to do this for you as well. But yeah, so that's my experience with Paramore. I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say, and I'm going to go ahead and read a couple of comments just so that we keep this a conversation. Leslie Mullet says, they've said that this album is the darkest lyrically, which I agree with. Now, I don't have a lot of experience with previous Paramore lyrics to compare this with too, but there is definitely a lot of darkness, and for those of you on the YouTube live stream, you can kind of see the notes that I have prepared, and I've got notes on every single song and what every lyric means, and so it's going to be interesting, I think, to see if they are as dark as you're saying they are. Leslie, because I guess I wasn't thinking about that as I was going through the lyrics. I was just thinking, this song means this song means this. But after we've looked through them again together, I think it'll be interesting to see whether that turns up. King Queen Shanika says, this was definitely my favorite album so far. And I would say I still like Still Into You and Ain't It Fun better than any of the songs on this album, though there were a couple that I really did like. I liked Caught in the Middle. I liked Told You So, Rose-Colored Boy. I'd say those were my three favorite off of this album, though Tell Me How surprised me with how unique it was compared to other Paramore stuff. Silverjack145, one of our Patreon sponsors who makes all of this possible for everybody. Thank you. Says, haven't heard the album just yet. I do love the older stuff. Ain't It Fun and Still Into You were so great. So we're in agreement there. Zach says, I feel like Tame Impala was an inspiration for some of the riffs on this album. And I haven't listened to much Tame Impala myself. They did come out with that album recently. I'm woefully behind on my Tame Impala, but it's hard to keep up with everybody. All right. We got a couple of other comments, but we're going to go ahead and move on even still. Thanks, guys, who are watching this on YouTube, and thank you in the future to everybody who's watching this as a podcast. But let's go ahead and take a look at let's talk about the two singles that came out for this. We had Hard Times and Told You So, and I think what surprised people most about those songs in the context of Paramore is that they seem to really go against the Paramore sound. Now, that was good for somebody like me who doesn't like the hard rock as much, but a lot of the true old school fans were kind of disappointed. To be fair, as I was reading through YouTube comments on those music videos, the majority of comments seemed to be positive, and the majority of comments seemed to be anti-negative comments. So there would be one or two people who would cede some sort of disillusionment with Paramore, or would say that they weren't happy with what the band was doing, and then everybody else would be super positive about that. So I don't know if there's as big a controversy about the new Paramore sound as there is with a lot of other artists, or as much as even maybe some people seem to think that there is. Now, that's neither here nor there. I haven't run a poll. I don't know, but I'd love to hear what you guys on YouTube have to say about this. So please comment. Did you think that the sound changed, and do you think that that was a big deal? Did you care? Did you not care? This is a conversation after all. Now, me personally, like I said, I liked the change. It was just something more like what I'm used to. I really do kind of enjoy the bubblegum pop rock that Paramore seems to be coming out with on some of the songs. Not all of them. There is texture to this album. I won't say that there is a... Well, actually, I would say that there is quite a bit of texture. They go from energetic, heavy, fast, intense music all the way to very slow, intense, emotional music. And there's hardly a song on here that doesn't have a deeper meaning or have something worth talking about. So maybe the one extreme that they don't visit is pure bubblegum pop that's just about nothing. Now, some comments are coming in about people's thoughts. 11 Studios says, it changed, but I love it. Pugs Are Fabulous, love the name, by the way, says, I like old Paramore and new Paramore. And I think that seems to be kind of the general vibe and feeling that I'm getting from people. But let's go ahead and talk about these songs on After Laughter. Well, first, let's mention the sound. I will say, as far as the sound goes, there was a lot of muted guitar, which I really liked. I thought particularly it played well in Told You So and Rose-Colored Boy. The drums, of course, were an important part of the music and the mix. Haley's voice, I thought, was, as always with any Paramore song, one of their largest strengths, one of the most important things that they bring to music. And her voice is at its best when she gets sort of intense in just a moment. It's like the whole song is being very laid back or chill, or it's just kind of proceeding at the same speed, and then she gets louder and higher pitched, and she does kind of that little, it's like she's like curling her voice around something in the middle of the air and then bringing it back down, and it's just like it pops up and it's gone. And that moment when her voice does that, I think is the best thing about any Paramore song, even maybe better than the deeper lyrics, because her voice just sounds really awesome. So that's what I got from the sound of this album. That's what I liked about it. But let's talk Hard Times. In fact, let's just talk the meanings of all of these songs. We'll just go track by track and see what you guys have to say about this. Hard Times is about overcoming difficulties, even if they seem overwhelming. At this point, Haley is 28, which is important to note because later on there's a song on this album called 26. And as she's growing up, there were some difficulties with the band. Several band members left. I know at least one came back, and one of the songs is about that reunion, Grudges, which doesn't forebode well for the relationship, but don't worry, it turns out all right. And then we have, Well, sorry, there's a lot happening, I guess, as far as growing up in this time period in Haley's life. And so it feels like a lot of songs are about some of that. So Hard Times is about those difficulties. I thought it was a good song. It wasn't my favorite song musically on the album. But then Rose Colored Boy, I really liked the sound to it. It was very upbeat. But it was still kind of this warning to this guy that she's dating or in a relationship with, and she's telling him, don't try to make the world seem better than it is when I want to focus on the negative for a little bit, which might sound bad at first, but I think she makes a good point. This guy is an over-optimist, and he's forcing his optimist on her. You're familiar with the phrase rose-colored glasses. Rose-colored boy is just her saying that he looks at the world through rose-colored glasses, and she doesn't want to be forced to. He won't give up on her. He knows that like she can make it and she can be a good person and a productive member of society. She says, just chill. I want to be able just to hang out with you. All right. Then we get into Told You So. I really like the sound of Told You So. Strong song. It was others telling her that they didn't like telling her so, but they told her so, and she sincerely doubted that they didn't like it. She knew that she had made a mistake, and she had failed, which I thought gave texture to the song and made it mean something important, which I really liked. But she also wasn't putting up with people who would, on one side of their mouth, say, you know, I feel bad for you. I wish I didn't have to tell you that you were wrong. But on the other side, she knows that they enjoy it. So, and I really like the music for that. One of my favorite songs on the album. We'll go through some of these a little bit more quickly until we get to some of my more favorite ones. But I'm curious to hear from you guys. Which songs do you think are the best on this album? And we'll take a look at some of those comments. I am going to take a quick comment break to see what you guys are saying. A couple of people saying more about how they liked the sound, they liked the change. Leslie Molt says they've been moving towards pop for a while. That shouldn't have surprised anyone. Really, I like the way that it has some sort of island vibes. About the sound change, yeah, I think you could always feel it coming with self-titled. I'm Not Me, Am I says. General Stevius asks, what are their songs about? And that is what we are getting into. Silverjack145, it isn't a big of a controversy than what happened to Linkin Park back then, but there is definitely something going on with that and the fans that like the older stuff. Okay, so maybe there is a little bit more controversy than I'd like to admit. But we'll see. I was hoping to hear more from her voice, though. A lot of it in the album was quiet. Crybaby's Hips fan says, and you know what? Honestly, can we ever get enough of Haley's voice? I think that's a good point. All right. Playing the album in the background right now, I'm Not Me, Am I says, how can you do that? How can you focus on both at the same time? That's impressive. I think He Told You So is too repetitive, Crybaby Hips fan says. There is definitely some repetitiveness on here, and if your name is Crybaby, it makes sense that your next comment is that you like be Fake Happy. That Fake Happy is your favorite, which we're going to get to in just a second. It's 2 songs away, but it's an interesting song for sure, and I think a lot of people are going to be relating to it, and we'll talk about that why in just a second. All right, so back to Forgiveness. Basically, she's in this relationship. This boy is mean to her, but he wants forgiveness. And she's having a hard time trusting him, though, and forgiving him for it. And so she's having this conflict about it. And the music itself is quiet, slow, thoughtful, and I thought understated. It was well done. It was interesting. But it is about that relationship and somebody wanting forgiveness, but her not being sure that she wants to give it. We get into Fake Happy, and this is the one that I think will especially appeal to Melanie Martinez fans, just because it is about pretending that you're happy. But in this case, it's not Melanie Martinez saying that her fans are pretending to be happy or something like that. Not Melanie Martinez, Haley from Paramore. Haley is saying that she pretends to be happy and that a lot of her fans think that she's happier than she really is, and so she pretends to be happier than she is when she's on stage, and that it's an easy thing to hide. Basically, she makes the point that it's very easy to fake happiness, and she wishes that people wouldn't always accredit this true happiness to her. I think that this is a popular song among Melanie Martinez fans and will be, because that's essentially probably 60% of what Melanie Martinez's music is about, is being different from other people, them not understanding who you are on the inside, and you being so much more complicated and complex. Now, I think that some of what Melanie Martinez says is good, and I sometimes think that some of what she says is overly dramatic and is kind of selfish or puts herself first over other people, but a lot of people are going to have a lot of different opinions on that. Fake Happy, though, I don't think falls into that trap. I think that it just does a fine job. But if you are being fake and being happy, I would just ask Haley, well, why don't you stop faking it? Does she have to do it to make money? Maybe she should find a different profession. I'm not exactly sure, and I don't want to pass judgment because I don't know. I'd love to hear what you guys have to think and say about that. Then we get into 26. Now, Haley is 28, so she could have very well been 26 when she wrote this. But I thought, now this song, I thought had some of the best written lyrics, partially because they were a little bit more confusing than your average lyrics, and partially because they used literary devices and complicated ideas that you don't see present in a lot of these other ones. A lot of these other ones were very easy to figure out. They were very surface level, but in a good way. But 26 seemed to be the best tour de force of songwriting ability. So she says, seems like a song to 26 or to her 26 self. I'm sorry, it seemed like a song to the age 26 or to her 26-year-old self. And essentially she was giving this person life advice and telling this person or this year how to get the most out of that year or how to get the most out of life. I thought it was very powerful and very well written. Then we get into Pool, which is a pretty interesting song. This one I was confused about, and it reminded me a lot of Tear in My Heart by 21 Pilots. It was about being addicted to a difficult relationship, possibly a harmful relationship. Jury is still out on this. I couldn't tell for sure 100% whether the relationship was a bad one or a good one or just a difficult one, whether it was a human one. I think a lot of relationships are difficult and that there is a lot of pain that goes into any relationship because here are two people who are not the same in every way, trying to fit together and make things work. And so there are going to be differences, there's going to be arguments, there's going to be hurt feelings, and it was very difficult to tell what the song was about. Now, I'm not going to ever accuse Paramore on this album of doing what I think a lot of pop music does, and that's being purposefully vague so that more people will buy it and can relate to it. I thought Paramore did a very, very good job of writing honest, true lyrics. I felt like these lyrics were powerful because they were honest and true, and because she wasn't trying to BS us with just an attempt to sell music to us, which I think is about as much as I can ask of a good artist in a commercial society, right? Or in a what is it called? Commercialism, capitalist society. Where you sell art, and selling art is how you live. But so I thought Pool was good. My question just was it like Tear in My Heart, where he talks about how 21 Pilots Tyler Joseph talks about how this relationship actually makes him stronger because it hurts him, and his wife is the tear in his heart who helps him to figure things out and to become a better person. Is this relationship like this, or is it just human, or is it actually harmful? Those were my questions. I'd be curious to hear what you guys have to say about it. But it looks like Pool is the favorite of at least one person, Crybaby Hips fan. It's another one of her favorites. I'm Not Me says, hey, yeah, Pool. Haley said Pool is the only love song on the record. And that does make sense to me. I don't think Forgiveness is a love song. It's a little bit more of a breakup song. And I'm always impressed when an artist's tracks on an album do not consist completely of love songs. So easy to write a love song nowadays, because you can just write the simplest, sappiest BS. It doesn't even have to be sappy. It just has to be about love somehow, some way. But to keep an entire album, for the most part, free of love songs is impressive. Not that love songs are bad, just it's, I think, difficult. All right, then we get into Grudges, which I thought had a really good sound. It was energetic pop rock, one of the harder rocking songs on this album. It was about how Zach Farrow quit the band and then rejoined it. And so it's just kind of Haley greeting him again and saying, welcome back to the band. Then we get into Caught in the Middle, where we have this interesting, complicated lyrics. I thought these were another example of good lyrics on this album, or well-written lyrics. And it was about being afraid to dream or to be stuck in the past. And I really liked the concept here, because it kind of felt like she was stuck in the middle of her 20s, and like she didn't want to think too much about getting older. She didn't want to have to worry about dreaming about the future or knowing what was going to come next. But she also was afraid to get stuck in the past and to think about nostalgia too much and to think about what life used to be, things like that. So I really liked how she kind of talked about that confliction she has and that juxtaposition between the two different directions that she could go, and she feels like she can't go to either. And so it was a complicated feeling, well expressed. I really liked the lyrics on that one, and I really liked the sound. It was one of my favorite sounds on the album. It might even be my favorite, not even sure. But with those complicated lyrics and interesting, deep lyrics of a unique concept that I don't think a lot of people write about, it might just be my favorite song. But then we get into the last three. One of them is Idol Worship, and Idol Worship is just about a fan, or it's about fans who look up to her and think that she's this or that, or that she's so great, but she's telling them, no, I'm going to fail, I'm going to make mistakes, and you have to not hold me up so high that you don't allow me to make mistakes and that you aren't able to forgive me after I make those mistakes. Then we get into No Friend. No Friend is a story about the band. It's a history. It's actually lyrics from the band read out loud over the course of kind of an understated musical piece. The music does add tension to it, and I like it. It's not really a typical song in that they're reading old lyrics from other songs. So it was very interesting, very unique. Then we get into Tell Me How, and that's the last one on the album. And I thought this was the most unique to Paramore. It seemed like a simple piano ballad. It reminded me more of Adele than anything that Paramore has ever done before, and I thought they did a fine job of it. I wasn't super excited about it because it's not my favorite genre to listen to, so I might be biased against it, but I thought that it was really, really well done. It could be, I think, about death and about how you relate to somebody who is dead, or just the death of a relationship, something like that. It was about endings and what to do after those endings, and it really seemed to have overtures and a tone that related to death. All right, guys, those are all of, pardon me, English teacher self-policing, the meanings for these songs. That's my review of this album. I'd have to say that as far as lyrics go, I really, really liked it. On a scale of 1 to 5, I'd give it a solid 3 or 4, probably a 3.5. As far as music goes, I didn't think it was super interesting. There could have been more of Haley's voice, like somebody mentioned earlier. So I'd give it probably a 3 out of 5 as far as that goes. And then as the themes, probably a solid 4. So I would have this as a highly rated, probably a 4-star album, 3.5 to 4 stars. I really did like it. It wasn't the best album of the year. I don't think it's going to blow anybody's minds. I don't think it's experimenting with new territory necessarily. It feels like they're kind of pulling together a lot of things that people have already done, but in a new and interesting, unique way. So I didn't feel like it was an art masterpiece, but I think some of the ideas in the album are very much worth considering, particularly on Caught in the Middle, Idol Worship. I think a lot of people are going to enjoy Fake Happy. Rose-Colored Boy, I thought it was a unique idea. And again, if I have to say anything good about this album, it's just that there were some really unique ideas to these lyrics and themes. She talked about herself. And usually if people talk about themselves, you're annoyed with them because it's selfish or it's rude and they're not asking you about yourself. But with an artist, with music like this, we want to hear about the struggles they go through so that we can relate to them. And that is a big part. That's probably 30% of what good lyrics are about. And so I really appreciated that she did that. She didn't give us any BS pop, shallow, fluffy stuff. And so I really, really like that. But that's my review of Paramore's album, After Laughter. Thank you guys. Thanks to you on iTunes for listening to this. I really appreciate you guys being here and being a part of this. Those of you who are on YouTube right now, I'm actually going to stop recording the podcast and answer some questions from you guys, and that's how we're going to end this out. People on Podcast World, if you want to join the YouTube community, feel free to do it. If you go to popsongprofessor.com, go to any of the explanations, or just go to the menu in the top left corner, there will be links to YouTube. You can subscribe there. It's a great place to join a community and make this into a conversation. People on YouTube, if you are spending a lot of time driving or just doing nothing and you want to know the deeper meanings of songs, I have literally all of the song explanations you could ever wish for. Maybe that's not completely true, on my podcast. And if you go to my website, popsongprofessor.com, you can find those there. I'll tell you more about that in just a second after we close with the podcast. So let me say goodbye to the podcast world. Podcast listeners, thank you guys. I appreciate the fact that you're a part of this, and I hope that you guys have an excellent rest of your day. I care about you guys, and keep listening to music, keep thinking the deep thoughts, and keep asking for more from your music. I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks. Oh, shoot. All right. Well, anyway, that podcast might not actually work out. I just looked at the waveform, and it looks like I was pretty loud the whole time, so that might be kind of ruined. But let's double down, focus on what you guys are saying on YouTube. I'm going to go back through a couple of comments, the past few here. Leslie Mullet, yeah, I can't wait to figure out what they were saying in No Friend. Hopefully if you go to genius.com, they've got the lyrics there. That'll really help. Really, it's a conglomeration of lyrics from the other songs that they put out. But it really is about the band's history and just kind of where they've come from. just finished making a Mother's Day video for my church this Sunday, listening to After Laughter while I was editing. Zachman Pro. Zachman Pro is actually a patron over on Patreon. Zach, you mean the world to me, you and everybody else on Patreon, and I'm so glad that you joined recently. We've had a great time, and I look forward to bringing some more stuff to Patreon. I'm glad that you're enjoying After Laughter, and that's cool. Editing video, nice. All right. Giancarlo Garcia, I was listening to the album right now. Nice. Will you ever do something like this for the new T.O.P. album? Tyler and Jish asks. And I have to say that I will most certainly do so much for the new 21 Pilots album. When it comes out, if it comes out, I will be there. I will make 50 videos about it. I'm Not Me on My says, no hate, but I like Paramore's Little Experiment more than Fall Out Boys. I don't know. I think it works better. I agree with you. I think Paramore, well, Young and Menace was interesting, but it might have been too poppy. And I think the lyrics here on Paramore songs mean more. She's being honest with us, and she's opening herself up in a more vulnerable way. Young and Menace was a little bit more pandering. Simone says, Bon Appetit by Katy Perry. And you know what? I think it's basically just about sex and food metaphors, so I don't know if I can really help out too much more than that. Though I have been curious about it myself and have thought about getting deeper into it, but just haven't taken the time, unfortunately. Leslie Mullet says, yeah, I wouldn't say it's the best album ever. The lyrical flow wasn't what I necessarily expected, but she was really saying something. I think that basically sums this up as best as it could be summed up. I like that I'm Not Me on My says, bye to the podcast friends. That's awesome. Hey, actually, guys, if you would do me a favor, I could really use some help here. I do have this podcast on iTunes, and I'd love for you guys to check that out. While you're here, if you enjoyed this video or if you're bored, if you guys would give a review on this podcast and any other podcast that you've heard me say, I will very quickly show you how to get there. And then I'll answer a couple more questions and we'll peace out of here. Window capture. I gotta just open it up. Takes a second. There we go. Okay, so there's my iTunes. If you go to podcasts, and you go to store, and then you type in Pop Song Professor, or if you go to my website and you click to it from there, you have to search it. It sometimes works. It always works. There we go. And then you click on Pop Song Professor Podcast, and you head down to ratings and review. Honestly, I am very, very excited about what this podcast means, and I think that podcasting is honestly the best way to explain songs. Don't tell everybody else on YouTube. YouTube is great, but I get dinged for the copyright infringement even when it's fair use, and I don't even do the things that I should be allowed to do. It's very ridiculous and very difficult, but I am able to do much more on the podcast. And as you can see, I have 37 episodes on the podcast. 21 Pilots fans, you will be excited to know that I have all of Vessel explained here. And then lots of other stuff. I've got some Katy Perry. I've got some Lorde, Coldplay, which was also on YouTube. Talked about Heavy Dirty Soul, some of The Weeknd, a lot of stuff on here. So it's definitely worth subscribing to. But if you guys wouldn't mind hitting up the ratings and reviews, and if you guys could give an honest review of it, that would mean the freaking world to me. And I love reading those. They always mean a lot to me. So if you have the chance to do that, I'd appreciate it. And it's a great way for us to stay connected. Because I think that we oftentimes listen to music, but we don't always think about what it means. And so if sometimes I can sneak one of my podcasts in there in between, like, the 50th song you've listened to for the day, then it's something that, can help you to enjoy that music more. And so it's kind of like you're charging up, getting ready to go back to your music. So I really like doing it. Okay, let's see. Questions. So if you, just to recap that while I'm looking at questions, if you can review the podcast, I would love that. I need reviews, I need downloads. So as you guys are watching it and listening to it and commenting, you can't comment on iTunes about each individual podcast, but we can still have conversations. Feel free to email me at clifford@popsongprofessor.com. And that's a great way to have a conversation about what we talk about on the podcast. So a couple of comments here before we peace out for today and I get back to all of the wonderful work I have to do. How do you think the album will work out on live shows? I mean, there's a lot of tech sounds and some people don't like it when bands use strong backing tracks. 21 Pilots is a great anti-example of that, but I know what you mean. I think that they're going to do fine. I think that there's going to be easy substitutions for a lot of it. Haley's voice is the most important part, after all, and there's a lot of electric guitar and drums. I think that some of the electric-y sounding stuff are just weird things they did with the electric guitar, and so I think that that'll translate pretty easily. Merrick Trojan, wish you would do something similar for the upcoming Lord album too, and I'm going to say that I'm pretty certain I will. Silverjack145, I'm back. What did I miss? Seems like the whole thing. Oh, yeah, no, I'm sorry that you missed part of that. The good news is that it'll all be posted to YouTube live in just a sec, because we are almost done. Leslie Mullet, guesses on what the next music video is for Paramore. I'm going to guess Fake Happy. Fake Happy is a possibility. I think that Caught in the Middle has the most... Well, I think, yeah, Fake Happy is going to appeal to a certain audience that I think is on YouTube a lot, and so I think it makes business sense to do Fake Happy. I would really like to see Caught in the Middle because that was my favorite song off the album, and I thought it had some of the deepest ideas. But yeah, Fake Happy is probably a pretty safe guess. Zachman Pro, just subscribe to the podcast. Zachman Pro, you are just an all-around superstar. We've got you. You're on Patreon. You're subscribed to the podcast. You're subscribed here on YouTube. You are, I think, a true lyric theorist. Thank you very much for doing that. The podcast is over. Just us now. Yep, it is. Anything you wanted to say about the podcast, listeners, then now's the time to do it because they can't hear you. Well, having a girlfriend sure does require some time. Yeah, that makes sense. Do you have Liability by Lord on there? Let me double check because I can't remember. And the screen's going to look funny for just a sec while I scour this. In fact, I'll show you what I'm looking at. Boom. I did do a Lord song. Which one was it? Oh, it was Greenlight. I didn't do Liability. I am so sorry. But the cool thing about the podcast is just that it's kind of an opportunity to go more in depth than what we're able to do on the Pop Song Professor. Pop Song Professor, I have to keep videos under 10 minutes. Otherwise, people just don't watch them. And I get bored after 10 minutes of editing video. Well, editing 10 minutes of video takes an hour or so. But the podcast is a really good place to go even further in depth and to talk about it. There'll be more streams in the future. I guess it's not a big deal if I miss just one. No, every stream is amazing. Also a bit off topic, but I recently discovered NF and he writes deep stuff, and I think it would be interesting to analyze. Yeah, I've gotten a lot of suggestions for NF, but haven't really ever gotten into them. We'll have to see. I think it's a possibility. All right, guys, thank you so much, everybody, for being here. This was a fantastic experience for me. I'm glad that you guys were all able to make it as well. Thanks for commenting. Thanks for being part of this conversation. Don't forget to head over to iTunes, check out the Pop Song Professor. I will put a link in the description here soon. And if you could give me an honest review about what you thought about this podcast right here, that just does a world of good to help me out. So I appreciate you guys in any case. Thanks so much for watching and have a great rest of your day. Thoughts on the 1975? Somebody asked really quickly. I love them. All right. Talk to you guys later. Have a great day.